How does Barbara Gordon flip her pancakes? With a bachelor. Come on, that's good. Welcome to the greatest DC comic show on YouTube. It's Fanboys Live and the Retro Review. So happy that you're joining us. Tonight we're going to find out who's watching the Super Bowl and who isn't watching the Super Bowl. Welcome to the show on behalf of Tim the Comic Collector, who I think is working. I'm Ryan Magic Lasho, welcoming you to the show, as well as saying hello to Signature King Tony Fett. How are you?
Not too bad on this Super Bowl Sunday.
It is. Are you watching any of the game?
Not really. I had a laundry list of things to do, so I'm checking the score every now and then, but I'm not vested.
Taylor's there.
Okay.
Reba's there.
I think she's, isn't she performing?
She did the national anthem.
Oh, she did the national anthem. Well, that's still a performance.
Yeah. So very cool. Well, happy week to you. We'll start out by saying hello to our live chat. If you're watching on the rewind, of course, we appreciate you spending time out of your day to join the greatest DC comic show on YouTube. Hello to Super Russ 9000. I hope you're doing fantastic and have had a great weekend. It's nice to be with you as we wind down the weekend. Tony, how was your week?
Busy, but hopefully things are going to calm down this week. Got a big work project that was due, and I was done. So hopefully looking forward to the slowness and catching up on things.
Yeah. So you put out a video this past week where you talked about your Philip Tan autograph.
Yes.
And I didn't get a chance to tell you that I met Philip Tan and have a Philip Tan autograph. I don't have it here with me.
Okay.
But it was at C2E2, and each year they have like these commemorative posters for the convention. And that year it was art by Philip Tan. It was this awesome image of Superman flying over Chicago.
Oh, that's cool.
And to try to get one of the gigantic posters was really tough, but I got one. I didn't get like the little 8x10 size poster. I got like the huge, massive poster too, and I got him to sign that.
That's still pretty cool. That's
awesome. Well, I was really happy with that. So
he's one of my favorite physical signatures. Just because I like the way he uses his little. It's a really skinny paint pen, and it looks amazing on everything.
Yeah, cool. Well, I want to say hello to Kenneth Bird. Happy Super Bowling or non-Super Bowling to you. It's great to have you here tonight. So, Tony, as we start to look at news, I think we'll talk a little bit more in depth about this when we get to the retro review, but probably the biggest news story is a sad news story. Comic book artist Jose Delbo passed away earlier this week at the age of 90, which is going to inspire our retro review for this week. So we'll talk more about that, but I'll tell you, with no disrespect to anyone else, he was my favorite.
Why him? There's nothing wrong with him. He's very talented. But
sure, but I know he's not in a level like people wouldn't associate him like a George Perez or an Alex Ross or something like that.
Yeah.
But he drew Wonder Woman for 6 years consistently. He was her artist for 6 consecutive years. Even I think he did some of the world's finest titles that she appeared in as well. So when I first became aware of Wonder Woman, he was drawing her. So he always drew my Wonder Woman. And that's why he became my favorite. There's a lot of very underrated artists, but there's a lot of, if you read, I didn't get the chance to meet him personally. I've been able to pass messages along to him and through his family. And back in the fall, I tagged him in a post on my Instagram and he replied to it. But man, did people have great stories about how great he was to his fans. And he's one of those that nobody has a bad interaction with him. And what a legacy to be remembered that way too, in addition to your talent, to be known as just a nice person. So
yeah, they don't make them like that, so to speak, anymore. I like talking to some of the guys that were creating comics in the '60s and '70s, just because it's a completely different culture
Sure.
versus someone coming into the industry now.
Hmm.
And it's just you could talk to some of those older guys. One that sticks out in my mind, Roy Thomas.
Yeah.
I love chatting with Roy Thomas, and he could talk to you about comic books and art, to the sunrise. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
from what I understand, it he was one of those. So
Hmm.
and now if you were to attend a con with some of the newer people, it's just like you're just a $10 bill to them.
Yeah. And some of those people, some of the artists don't draw on paper anymore.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think anyone does anymore. I really don't. I can't
yeah.
think anyone that. I mean, besides like a a doodle here and there, but I don't think they really submit paper drawings anymore.
Yeah. Let's say hello to some more joining us in the live chat. Yeehaw is here. Yeehaw. I was just thinking about you earlier today, and I was like, haven't seen you for a while, so I hope that your New Year's been off to a good start. I appreciate seeing you pop in tonight, too. And he's commenting on what you said about Philip Tan. And then we have Paul S. joining us for Fanboys tonight, too. Hope you're doing well. And as they say, better late than never, Comic Food 2814 is here.
Better late than Tim.
Yeah. The worst part is I was here. I couldn't get my webcam to work. I was like trying everything, and then I realized it wasn't plugged in.
That usually does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's it going, everyone?
We're doing well. How was your week?
Good.
Good. So we're just kind of into the news portion, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we get to the retro review. Just mention how Jose Delbo's passing was probably the biggest comic book news, at least I think, of this past week. Tony, what else is going on comic book news wise?
A huge announcement in the comic book game here. Let me share my screen with you. So I want to use some of the art here so we get a nice visual of what we're talking about. So Ramona Fairdawn retires.
Ramona Fairdawn, yeah.
Yeah, Fairdawn. Okay, yeah. At the age of 97, and here's some of the art that they're known for. So calling it quits in the comic book industry at 97.
Yes, I think crazy. Tony missed last week's news.
Yeah,
did I?
So we covered this last week.
Oh,
yes. So
I'm sorry, but I'm in the forums, pretty regularly, and we're still talking about it. So I thought we talked about it. But hey, here's some cool art by them. So check it out. I thought this one was so cool.
Yeah. Of course, Ramona Fairdawn, she, first of all, being a pioneer as a woman artist, a woman published artist for a major company is something to be said right there. She was a regular on the Aquaman title, the Volume 1 back in the Silver Age. She was known for her work on Super Friends. She created the Wonder Twins. They came in the comic book that she drew before they debuted in the cartoon. So
it says here co-creator of Metamorpho and Aqualad as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know about Aqualad. That's pretty cool. I knew she did some stuff on Metamorpho.
Oh, you want to show your Metamorpho again?
Go ahead.
Look at that.
Very cool. And that's the first appearance, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then this is his first title.
I
think I showed these last week.
Yeah. No, but those are. I'm glad you brought that up because those are great keys. Still affordable. Because he's coming into the movie, so who knows what the price that's going to. Not that food's not a flipper, so it doesn't really matter. But for if you're into that.
Yeah, I've liked Metamorpho ever since Batman and the Outsiders. That's what introduced me to him.
Are you curious to see what he's going to be like on the big screen? Are you going to see him, like when that movie comes out?
We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. But news-wise, it was really humdrum.
So something else news-wise that did come out. We've kind of talked about this off and on for the past several years, but there is an update to the Three Jokers. Did any of you pick up the Batman issue that came out this past week? Is it 143, I think?
Yeah,
143. Did you read it yet?
No.
Okay. Well, the Three Jokers is essentially explained. in that issue. Am I good to explain this now, or is this something that you don't want spoiled for you?
No, absolutely. Go ahead, because I got another point to bring on that. So go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, what do you guys think about the three Jokers, just based on what you know before what I'm about to tell you?
I mean, when it was first announced, I was more excited for it, and then when it came out, I was less excited for it. So it wasn't what I was hoping it was going to be, but it's an interesting story.
Okay. And Fu, what did you think about it?
I didn't read it.
Okay. All right.
Well, I mean, it's just the general concept that there are three Jokers out there.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking to myself,
Yeah.
As we've said before, how can Batman, who's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, not realize that these are three different people?
Yeah, it never really appealed to me, but whatever.
Sure. Well, in Batman 143 that came out, the big mystery behind the three Jokers is revealed. There are not three Jokers, at least not physically. There is one Joker with three versions of himself mentally.
Okay.
They are backup versions of each other, all living in the same body. So that is the big spoiler on what the deal with.
What does that do for him?
I don't exactly know.
They're all the same to me,
They kind of describe the different personalities. How one is the entertainer,
right?
There's one that's just the stone cold killer.
Okay.
And I guess it's just whichever one of those. I don't know.
Does that really make him more interesting or less interesting?
I think they would have been better off just to forget about the entire thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Speaking of three Jokers, 2023 Baltimore Comic-Con, Jeff Johns had a panel, and he talked about three Jokers. Three Jokers is also getting another run. They're bringing that story back. It wasn't clear if they were continuing it or what, but any three Jokers fans out there, it is definitely coming back. And he did say it was 2024, so stay tuned. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, well, with what Michael says, I think there was three in the book too, but now they're trying to explain it as it's just one, and I don't know. That's.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Jeff Johns, obviously. I mean, that's some of my favorite Green Lantern stories, but not everything he did was an absolute hit, right?
Correct.
I mean, yeah, not everything he does is a hit, but I would agree that three Jokers is probably not the strongest Jeff Johns out there.
Yeah.
It's just not his forte to describe, someone like the Joker, that kind of character. Yeah, but I think he should definitely come back for some more Green Lantern.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's figure that out.
Although you never know, because he could have had that one story in his head, and just spread it out over a decade, and maybe he doesn't have anything else.
Yeah, he brings it all the way around to like another Blackest Night, so to speak.
Right.
And we're all just like, whoa. That would be fun.
There are one and doners out there. I got one idea and that's it. So
yeah, but Johns isn't a one and done. That's for sure. He's done a lot of good stuff. His JSA run was awesome. His current one, his most recent one. Yeah.
Oh, the one that's 12 issues long, started in 2022 and still hasn't wrapped up yet.
Nope, still going.
Still going.
It comes out once a month.
No, it's supposed to come out once a month.
Come out once a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are the
it
ones
comes
that
out
really
about once every 3 months.
And see, that like totally loses it for me, because I don't have that kind of attention span anymore.
Yeah, by the time you get the last issue, you'll be like, wait a minute, what happened to issue 2? And you got to go back and like.
Right.
Well, literally, I mean, it came out in the fall. Issue 1 came out in the fall of 2022. 12-issue series. Issue 8 isn't out yet.
That's insane.
We're in 2024.
Oh my God.
It's such a mistake to do that. Another one, it's not DC, but Saga, that's lost me too, because the same thing.
Yeah, they do.
I remember back in the day, like when Johns was doing Green Lantern, it was like every week it seemed like there was a new book. I was so excited to hit the store every Wednesday. Don't all scroll me.
I've been pretty, lucky in that department where DC's at least kept my interest. alive enough to continue to go visit my LCS on a weekly basis.
When was the last time they had a Shazam?
There's still a current run. There's one happening right now.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Okay.
For the last 5 years, there's been a consistent Shazam run.
Has there really?
If not Shazam, there was a Mary Marvel run. There was a Black Adam run. You know what I mean? So ever since the first movie got announced, there's been a current Shazam.
Okay.
So try again.
DC got me this week with a bait and switch. They got me with a good bait and switch.
Okay,
yes,
I'm interested.
They did. So the character Trinity has her own special. This is Wonder Woman's daughter, which I say with air quotation marks. Oversized special. So I pick it up. I'm thinking I'm getting a brand new story.
It's a reprint.
I'm getting one new story with everything else that's already been reprinted on her.
Oh, wow.
I'm getting like a one brand new 6 to 8 page story. That's
so stupid.
With variant covers, with incentive covers, 1 in 25, 1 in 50, baby. Bait and switch. I thought I was. Of course I did.
Man, if Wonder Woman was a Pokemon, Magic Lasso would be the elite Wonder Woman trainer.
They got me good. So.
Well, that's unfortunate. That sucks, man.
So how many short boxes are you up to for Wonder Woman?
I don't have short boxes. I have long boxes, and I just had to get a new long box on this trip this past week. So.
Well, how many long boxes?
6 of just Wonder Woman, I think.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That's respectable. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But you got to remember, Volume 1 only had one cover. Almost everything of Volume 2 only had one cover.
Right.
It wasn't until we started getting into the Volume 3, which isn't a long volume at all. And even then, at the beginning, they only kind of did variant covers with her once in a blue moon. They never did incentive covers, but just a variant cover once in a blue moon. Now we're variant, we're incent, we're everything. We're 8 covers a month.
Yep.
And then some stores have to have their exclusives,
Yep.
Too much.
I hate those. Because sometimes a store will get a really awesome cover you want, and you'll never get it. Unless you want to pay eBay prices, but no thanks.
Sad. Any other news going on?
Not really. It's really quiet. Hopefully it's not the calm before the storm here. Next week it'll just be all news. It'll just be a show just news.
Yeah, it could be all news. So as we segue into the retro review this week, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Jose Delbo passed away, DC Comics artist among others. He worked for Marvel and some indies as well. He did some NFTs that made him a boatload of money. His Wonder Woman NFT is the one that DC ended up making that rule where you can't do that anymore because he made millions on that.
Yeah, that was that big one, right?
Yeah. So, but he was my favorite artist of all time. And I thought tonight we would showcase. I gave you guys a choice to choose what book you wanted to do from his DC work. And because you guys chose so wisely without my influence, we actually are able to cover 4 decades of his work at DC Comics. We have a story tonight from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s that he was an illustrator for. And, 90s a good age. But man, I was hoping he'd hang up there with Ramona Fradon and be with us at 98 and 99. And biggest regret, I never had the chance to meet him.
But you said you did.
I've communicated with him. Yeah, I've communicated.
That's still cool. That's still cool.
And I've got something awesome tonight, I think, for the book show portion.
When was the first time you had any kind of correspondence?
About
was it pre-social media?
No.
No,
it was about 7 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
So he was in his 80s. He was in his early 80s at the time. So, and more recently,
he was in the bushes outside his window at his house.
I have not been down in Boca Raton, but my most recent with him was this past fall when he commented on a post I tagged him in. So
Nice.
that's awesome.
Was it? You get the impression it was him running his
Absolutely.
Instagram? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. Man, it was what I was to say. If you were, communicating with him pre-social media back then, if you wrote to like, let's say Neil Adams or whatever, odds are you got some cool stuff back in the mail.
Yeah.
Which would have been awesome.
Pre-social media, I don't think I would have known where or how to find him.
That's true. Now you can just social media stalk people. Thanks, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. But Tony, if you want to pop your story up tonight, you're covering the 60s portion. And the issue you have tonight is a Spectre comic book from Spectre Volume 1. This is the final issue of the Spectre. And just so though we're very transparent with this, Jose Delbo only drew a little bit of the story, which was the second chapter in this. So there's some other artists that did the other chapters. But you can take it away, Tony.
So he did the second story, right? I'm just gonna do what he did, even though in my opinion the first story was much better. Let's see, right here, right?
No, that doesn't look right.
Nope. Yep, right here. Okay.
No, that doesn't look right either.
No?
That looks like the third to me. The second story is very short.
Because this is still the first. This is the first story. Because it's about the Journal of Judgment. This is the second story.
Keep going back up.
Yeah, this is story number 1.
Well, he drew the second chapter of it then.
Oh, okay. Well, then if you did story number 1, then that's perfect. The second,
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I do see kind of like an art style change. Okay. So anyway, going back up to the top here. This is the Journal of Judgment. For those of you who don't know a whole lot about Spectre lore, like anytime he like comes down to be the wrath, you know what I mean? The wrath of God. They don't say God, but it's in this book. It'll be like Soul John Smith, and here's what he did or she did. So he's bound to this book. Like him and Jim Corrigan, like they live and breathe by this book. So the Spectre's got to haul this thing around, and here he is, cursing, why am I chained to this book? And I'm going to say God. They don't say God, but it's obvious what they're implying. With the big pearly gates and a booming voice. So, I mean, come on. You have failed, Spectre. You weren't doing what I asked you to, essentially. You got involved. You did things that you shouldn't have, and stuff like that. So we get this short little story about the Spectre and Jim Corrigan. Going to bust this, old mafioso a hangout, so to speak, and the Spectre shows up, and he's when he interacts with people, it's so interesting because just the way he speaks, it's kind of like Shakespeare-y, if that makes sense, or if you ever heard like Etrick and the Demon kind of talk, that kind of thing. Kind of, I don't want to say rhymes, but I guess I don't know how to describe it. Etrick and the Demons kind of thing, but so he shows up, this big gang hideout, and he says, there is no mercy given to those your kind, even your very own life is forfeit. So these guys have committed a cardinal sin. I'm assuming it's murder. He takes them out with just a single slap, which is cool. And this is an interesting story. So here we have Jim Corrigan having a conversation with the Spectre outside of the Eternal Plane, which doesn't happen. Usually Jim Corrigan is the Spectre, and if he were going to go in here, it would just be Jim Corrigan as the Spectre. You wouldn't have both of them in the same room talking to the same bad guy. And here's where we get the story of where the Spectre kind of foobarred. He didn't really understand that he was under trial by God, and he lashed out at Jim Corrigan. And Jim Corrigan kind of cursed him and said, get out of my life and stay out. And Jim Corrigan lashed out, or the Spectre kind of lashed out at Jim Corrigan. That's where he foobarred. He ended up having to go to answer for his crimes directly to God himself. And we kind of get that short little origin story. You shall henceforth, the Spectre, you shall be given the book of life. If you handle the task assigned within the book, you shall be allowed to resume your normal previous standing. So he's got to carry this book around forever. And it's kind of like a reverse Thor kind of thing, where Thor has to pick up the hammer because he's worthy and he's this mighty warrior, where the Spectre, he's damned and he has to carry this book around. And you don't really get the sense in this story, but in other Spectre stories, he's carrying it around, and it is a physical burden that he has to take upon. It's painful to carry the book. It hurts to carry the book, but he can't throw it away or not have the book on him, which causes him to wander around the earth, doing God's judgment. And that is that's the end of this one. So I assume that's what this guy did, because the art style kind of changes. So yeah, that's the end of this issue.
It should say at the beginning of the story, right?
All right. Do one of you, are you able to pull up the assist for me for my stories, or otherwise I can do it for you?
Oh, yeah. Which one was yours again?
We'll start out here. We're going to do the Batgirl story from Batman Family issue number 12, which is the beginning story. And Jose Delbo definitely associated with Batgirl. And as we start out on our first page, we have a gentleman addressing the reader. He says, "Though you may not recognize me, reader, I'm sure you know that the costume cutie in the scene is Batgirl, and the airplane flying above Washington is Charles Lindbergh's famous Spirit of St. Louis. The pilot, however, is definitely not Lucky Lindy. He's a weirdo called Captain Arrow, and he's doing his darndest to dump his passenger. And just who or what is my personal interest in all of this? You'll understand when I tell you my name is Tony Gordon, and I am Batgirl's brother." So as we move on to the story, we can see that Tony's writing a letter, and he's telling Barbara that this letter is going to come to a shock because you and Dad thought that I had died all these years ago. And they remember back to how he was going to take and be the first balloonist to go all across the world. And but it didn't work out. And his balloon was lost, and he was declared dead, although a body wasn't found. But in truth he actually was working for the government on a spy mission to photograph missile sites in Red China. They found him, shot him down. They knew that he was believed to be dead, and they're trying to get secrets out of him, but he just played the innocent card. Fate was on his side, though, because he was able to escape. And they tried shooting him down, but he still was able to get out and went into hiding. He kind of figured he had a guardian angel. He was able to get to an embassy, and they were able to get him back to America. But if the Chinese found out he was alive, it would have caused an international spy incident, even worse than he was concerned. Their spy revenge-seeking agents would track him down and kill him. Therefore, the government created a new identity, and he was sworn not to contact Barbara or their father or anyone else that he knew. So now he's got a new job, and he is working at the Smithsonian Institution, although he's aware that his sister, Barbara Gordon, is a congresswoman. It just so happens that that same congresswoman has taken some visitors from out of town to tour the Smithsonian. And as they go in, they're going to look at some of the first planes to ever fly the coast, one called the Vin Fizz. But they're disappointed they don't get to see the Spirit of St. Louis because it was actually stolen out of the building previously. When all of a sudden an alarm goes off, Barbara tells the girls to run. They're not paying attention. But with the alarm, Tony comes running in, and he sees his sister. He's shocked about that, first of all. He sees his sister running away, and then he sees that the Vinwiz is starting to get captured. This is the famous plane from the Wright brothers. And then he sees Batgirl appear, and it only takes one glance to look at her, and he knows through that mask that that is his sister. So Batgirl is trying to stop the plane. She throws her batarang up on it. Captain Arrow takes off. Batgirl starts flying up with it, and then he cuts her ties, so she starts to fall from it. But luckily, she's able to take her bat rope and swing it around a building and essentially bring herself to safety. The entire time, her brother, who she doesn't know is alive, is watching this. And he knows he has to follow her. And it wasn't easy, but he saw her following. He started following her, saw her swinging from building to building. And then he knew that he was able to follow Batgirl's deductions. That the helicopter couldn't be too far away because it wasn't spotted in the air after it took off for very long. And it had to be in a building big enough to hold it, plus the Spirit of St. Louis, because presumably that would be the same crook. He sees Batgirl enter this hall, and there are the missing airplanes with Captain Arrow. And he's shocked to see that Batgirl has found him. And she says, let me introduce you to my fist. So they start to fight. And he's using his torch, his blowtorch. He's going to try to set her on fire, but her fire retardant cape stops that. He says, my grandpa helped the Wright brothers plane, and my dad gave Lindenberg flying lessons. Neither of them gave him being his father, the rightful place in history. So I've created a museum to honor their memory. So he starts to take off in the Spirit of St. Louis, and Batgirl jumps on board again. And she reminds him that Lindbergh flew this plane solo, but you're not. And he's shocked to see her in there and tells her to get out. And she knocks him out with a punch and starts to take control of the airplane, but they're getting ready to veer right off of a building and crash land especially. But she's able to stop the plane just in time. It hits the brick wall that's on top of the roof, but it knocks her head into the console and it knocks her unconscious. So her brother Tony goes running, and he pulls her out of the plane, and she's momentarily conscious enough to think that she saw him. And she's like, Tony? He's like, you're hurt, stay put. I'll go back for help. And he says, I couldn't risk your knowing that I'm still alive, as he continues to write his letter to her. And he says, I found help for you, but I didn't come back. I found out later that you had just a mild concussion. But I knew you'd be determined to find out if it really was me who you saw in your days. So I've had to leave town, adopt another identity. And he says, I can't let you track me down, Babs. So this is as far as my letter goes. And he takes his letter and burns it up. And that's the end of that story.
All right.
So if you can pull up my Wonder Woman story for me, please, that would be awesome. Jose Delbo was a Wonder Woman artist from 1975 to 1981. The issue we're going to do today, he didn't do this cover. This is a different artist who did the cover, which I think is amazing. But he did the interiors on this issue. This is the final issue he did for Wonder Woman. And this issue, there's a strange relationship that Wonder Woman fans seem to have with this issue. This is Ross Andrew who did the cover. But there's a strange relationship that Wonder Woman fans seem to have with this issue. It is so different than any other Wonder Woman issue that they really put out. And this was actually reprinted in Wonder Woman's all-time greatest stories for her 75th anniversary. So as we get started, you'll notice some historical events. And in the course of this story, watch some pages in this story, because I'll circle back to them in our book show. So we start with the Lincoln Monument, and, if the Lincoln Monument could cry, it would today, because at this very moment, President Reagan lies in a hospital in the nation's capital being treated for an assassin's bullet. So here we have some real life happening. But across town, another celebrated figure is being scanned by medical science's latest probing eyes. And the doctor says, how much do you want to know, Wonder Woman? And she says, I want to know everything, Dr. Wolf. So he says, we're looking at your CAT scans, and it confirms our diagnosis. You have metastatic melanoma. And she's like, how long do I have? And don't try to spare me. And he's like, well, with therapy, hospitalization, resting, a different lifestyle, maybe there's a possibility of it halting. And she's like, I'm an Amazon. Tell me how long I have. And he says, 6 months, I'm sorry. And she says, there'll be no hospitalization and no treatment. I choose to spend the rest of my life protecting innocent people against the forces of evil right until the end. I need you to remember your oath to keep this diagnosis as privileged information and keep it our secret. He says he will, and he says, but here, take these pills when the pain becomes unbearable. And she says, don't feel so dejected, Dr. Wolf. It's not how long you live, but how well you live. Later that afternoon, on top of a nearby roof skyscraper, there's some terrorists that are holding people for hostage, and if the authorities don't meet their demands, they're going to toss a person out of the roof every 10 minutes. And one of this older gentleman talks about, he was in a concentration camp when he was younger, and this is the way he's going to go out from a terrorist like this, and he kind of wonders what the world's coming to. Down below, the media is covering that while Steve Trevor is talking with a police officer, and he says, I'm going to shoot down to the terrorists, drop my backpack full of $20 million. Then 10 minutes later, they expect a giant helicopter with an airlift and a jet to take them to Gaddafi's secret sanctuary in Libya. So there's some more topical references for you. He says, but what's really going to happen is, while they're counting the money, I'm going to knock them out with a vial of gas that's going to put them for sleep for 24 hours. So that's really what's going to happen in the plan. We cut to Etta Candy and Diana Prince talking, and Ed is wondering if Diana heard any news on the disappearance of the blueprints of America's satellite killer. She says, Russians would give $1 billion for that. And she's like, I haven't heard anything. As far as we know, it's still in the country. They see on the news the terrorists that are going, and Steve Trevor is about to supposedly meet their demands. And Diana says, merciful Minerva. And they wish Steve Trevor good luck. So he jumps out, and he's following the original plan, and he's going to drop his ransom with his backpack with his ransom from 1,000 feet before he can attack him. So he drops the money. And then the terrorists are like, well, he dropped the money. I think maybe we might change our plan a little bit too and start using him as target practice. And Steve is like, oh, if I don't get out of here, I am a dead duck. Well, that older gentleman that was musing about, this is the way that he's going to die, he decides this has pushed him far enough and he's had enough. He's like, we've been gassed, we've been shot, never again. And he ends up losing his life for this. And as he's passing away, Wonder Woman arrives on the scene, and she reaches him and she comforts him and is with him for a brief moment, his last moment alive. Then she turns her attention to these terrorists, and they start firing their weapons at her. Steve Trevor has now landed on the roof. He wants to have some distraction so they're not focused on Wonder Woman. She reminds him that she grew up on Paradise Island playing bullets and bracelets. Steve Trevor is starting to get in on the action too. He's taken down some of the terrorists as well. And then finally, the terrorist has pointed a gun at Steve, and he says, okay, freeze or I'll blow his head off. And Wonder Woman essentially is frozen. She doesn't know what to do. So Steve Trevor makes a decision for her. He says, I'll make it easier for you, Angel. Farewell. And he jumps off the building. So Wonder Woman quickly takes that as her cue to lasso up the remainder of these terrorists and then jump off the building herself while calling for her robot plane to dive at maximum speed so she can get down and get a hold of Steve before he crashes to the ground. And she says, don't ever do this to me again, Steve, or I'll be the first Amazon with white hair. Now we cut over, same day, to some actresses in costume that are being auditioned for the starring role of Wonder Woman in a new film. And this poor actress, she's just kind of frozen up there. She can't deliver her lines, and they quickly bypass her. She's not going to get the job. The dejected actress trudges away when she pulls out some pills because the pain is becoming unbearable. And she says, okay, the pills are starting to work. And she's like, I fooled the doctors at the hospital before I came into the audition. They thought I really was Wonder Woman, but I'm no Wonder Woman. I'm a nobody. I was born a nobody, always rejected, and I'll die a nobody, just as if I never existed. So we cut over to a club where there's a clown trying to entertain folks, and he's getting booed and heckled. They tell him to go back and start washing dishes. And Wonder Woman, who is really this actress, but the crowd doesn't know it, appears and tells them to stop tormenting him. He's an old comic just trying to make you laugh. And she tells him to go to his dressing room. He's had enough. And they cheer for Wonder Woman and even say, Wonder Woman for president. But the old man knows that it's not the real Wonder Woman. It's his daughter, Amy. And he said, "Did you hear him cheer?" And she says, "That's because they thought that I was the real Wonder Woman, not your daughter." And he says, "Our luck's going to change. You know, you're going to get the part in that film, and I'm going to be your manager. We're going to be sitting on top of the world. We'll need a Brinks Express to carry our money to the bank." She's like, "Let's just get your paper and go home, Dad. I want to get out of this costume and makeup. I don't deserve to be in it." When they're home, he's reminiscing about the old days when he hung out with Judy Garland, Liz Taylor, Mickey Rooney. And he's like, "You're my daughter. It's in your blood. Success is going to happen for you." And she's just kind of like, "Yeah, Dad." And that's where she saw, actually at this point, she's remembering how she heard about the Wonder Woman auditions because she saw it in the newspaper that he was reading, which gave her the idea. Now we're cutting to an expensive hotel within the Washington Monument area where a man is in the shower and he's thinking about his hired terrorists served their purpose, which was to distract the police and the National Guard while they're dealing with that. And he recovered the blueprints of America's satellite killer that he's hidden. And he knows someone's going to pay him a fortune for this. But Conrad Carden is no ordinary man. He literally is heartless, for instead of flesh and blood and the emotions which arise out of that, his diseased heart has been replaced with a mechanical one. Plastic and wires pump blood throughout his body with an irresistible force of a tidal wave. Now we're with Wonder Woman, and she's watching the news, and Diana Prince is watching the news, and she sees Wonder Woman is currently live on the spot helping out a fire that has erupted in Capitol Studios where they're shooting the Wonder Woman motion picture. And she knows it's an imposter because she's Wonder Woman. She's like, "But this woman is bravely throwing her life away, but why? I'll have to find out for myself." So she takes the robot plane over to the studio. At the same time, Steve Trevor's hearing about this fire, and Wonder Woman is there, so he's going to head on over there. She gets inside. She sees the imposter who's starting to get overcome by the smoke. And she knows that she's safe, so she goes and gets the other people that are stuck in the building and leads them out one by one. And she shows them the way out, and she goes back for the imposter. And the imposter, Amy, she's shocked to see her. And Wonder Woman says, "I have to admire your attempt to rescue these trapped people. You're the courage of an Amazon, but not an Amazon's powers." But just before the exit, Wonder Woman says, "But in Aphrodite's name, why are you masquerading as me?" And she says, the Wonder Woman part, "I want to be you in the movie, but I failed here in the auditions. I'm a loser. I've rejected everything that I've ever attempted." And Wonder Woman says, "I'm not going to unmask you. Just go on without me and play Wonder Woman." So outside, we have the TV crew reporting on this. Steve Trevor has broken through the lines because Wonder Woman hasn't been out in a long time. He runs in there. All the while, one of the cameramen is that same Conrad, who is the true villain of the story. He's watching this. Steve Trevor sees Wonder Woman immersing. He grabs a hold of her, lifts her up in his arms. And what happens? He realizes it's not Wonder Woman. Her wig falls off and it's really Amy. He says, "You're an imposter." And she says, "Sorry, I meant no harm." And Steve says, "The people are right. You deserve a medal for your bravery. You have the heart of an Amazon." So this all gets Amy Kelly chosen for the role of Wonder Woman. And a few days later, they're starting to shoot the movie. They had the real Wonder Woman there, along with Jeanette Kahn, publisher, and Len Wein, editor of DC Comics' Wonder Woman comic book. They're there as well to check out the first day of shooting. And they talk about how the resemblance is amazing. And then Amy's father introduces himself to the DC Comics bigwigs. And then we cut to them starting to shoot some of the movie, where Wonder Woman is giving up her immortality to go to man's world to stop evil. And they finish that scene. Amy goes into her dressing room when her doctor comes to talk to the real Wonder Woman. He says, "Look, she impersonated you in the hospital." And he tells her what's really going on. She has terminal melanoma. She's going to die in agony in 6 months. If she returns to the hospital, we can make her last few days at least pain-free. And she's like, "I'll persuade her, doctor." So she goes in to talk to Amy and to get her to return to the hospital. Amy says, "I can't. Do you see my father? Do you see how he feels important again? He's been crushed for years. If you don't let me finish this picture, I'll die as if I never existed. Please keep my secret." Wonder Woman says, "I can, Amy. And Hera, help me. I will." So more filming of the movie goes on. Wonder Woman's kind of has some anguish about this, so she contacts her mother. The real Wonder Woman contacts her mother, Queen Hippolyta, on the mental radio, tells her what's happened, and says, Mother, I can't stop Amy until she finishes this last take. And her mother says, bring her to Paradise Island immediately, and our Amazon scientists will see what we can do to save this poor child. So Amy is resting. They have one scene left to do, but there's no dialogue. And Wonder Woman's like, I'll just take her place. Nobody will know. That way I can get her to Paradise Island faster. She comes out, and there is our villain of the story, Conrad, with a big flamethrower, and he's ready to burn everyone because he's trying to get these documents out of the country. And he even rips open and shows that he doesn't have a human heart. He's just plastic and machinery inside for a heart. So he whirls his flamethrower across. Wonder Woman's able to save the other people that are in the area, taking the brunt of it herself. But she's able to stop him by taking off her tiara, wheeling that, and it knocks him unconscious. She uses her magic lasso to get the truth out of him. And he says, I'm here to recover the Army satellite killer blueprints that I stole. I hid them in the cellar. And the director is filming all of this and says, hey, this is the new final scene for our film. What a way to end this. Wonder Woman has now taken Amy to Paradise Island. She's telling them she's about to land, and she has a deathly ill passenger with her. So in the palace of Queen Hippolyta says, Diana, it's too late. Our scientists are helpless. We tried the purple ray. Nothing can save her. The poor child is delirious and sinking. Amy looks at Hippolyta and says, Mother? And Hippolyta's like, merciful Minerva. And Wonder Woman realizes in her delirium, Amy thinks she really is Wonder Woman, and the Queen is her mother. Amy says, Mother, I'm so sleepy. Kiss me goodnight. And she says, yes, Diana, as the real Wonder Woman watches in tears. That night, an Amazon torchlit procession carries through for Amy's funeral. And they say it's fitting that Amy's final resting place is marked with a living tree green with hope rather than a lifeless stone. And they say, farewell, Amy, my sister. Almost a year later at an annual award show, Wonder Woman is there to accept an award and says, Amy Kelly is no longer with us, but I'm sure that you have made her very happy by awarding her the Oscar for Best Actress of the Year. Amy's father stands behind Wonder Woman and says, Amy will live on forever as the cinema Wonder Woman. Amy was not born in Amazon, but because of her sublime courage, she died in Amazon. And that's the wrap up to my story.
It's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it's definitely different for comic books.
It is very different, yeah.
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 And then, Comic Fu, you're going to wrap us up with a story and a character that I'm not very familiar with.
Yeah. Hold on a second. There we go. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with this either. I saw the list to choose from, looking for Jose Delbo art, and I figured, well, I hadn't heard of this, so I'd try it out. Right? We've got The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. I'm only going to cover the first issue here, but I believe it's a 4-part mini, and I didn't realize this until the end of the book, but you can see here we've got some Andrew Dice Clay. Apparently, this is tied to a movie of the same name, Adventures of Ford Fairlane, starring Andrew Dice Clay. This is not like just a telling of the movie story, and it's not like a continuing story. This is actually going to be the prequel to the movie, apparently. So I don't think I've ever seen the movie. I tried actually looking it up today to see if I could watch it. I couldn't find it anywhere, but here we go. The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. So not at all what I was expecting, but we start out here with our main character, Ford Fairlane, and he is in Hollywood, and he just got his new office as a Ford Fairlane Investigations. You can see his name on the door there. And then we kind of flash back a bit, and we've got back in the 70s, he was living in Brooklyn, and he was he played in a band, a rock and roll band, and this was around the time that disco started taking off. And so he's going into these clubs and he's seeing all the young kids wanting to hear disco, but you can see him in his leather jacket and all. He wants to play rock and roll. So him and his buddy, and it looks like they give him a nickname of Chevy Nova, I guess a play on Ford Fairlane. And they're talking about how much they hate disco, and the the band that they were supposed to play with or was there before them ends up being yet again another disco band, and they are replaced by this band. The crowd would prefer um, music that's no longer played with instruments but is electronic, synthesized drums. So then, out of nowhere, this guy gets thrown. It's not really clear what's happening here, but Ford and his buddy get into the mix of this fight. Friggin' rockers. Um, and they're in this fight at this bar when these guys show up, and they show up with guns, right? So he's saying whoever started this fight owes us a lot of money. And Fairlane's buddy runs out of there, and well, they both run out of there, I guess. And they're sitting in this alley afterwards, and his friend's like, "I knew disco would be the death of us. um, we can't play clubs anymore. We can't even stay in Brooklyn now, right?" So Ford has the idea. He's like, "Well, hey, we always said we wanted to go to L.A." So they decide that's what they're going to do. They're going to go scout out some record companies in LA and try to get a record deal. So that's what they do. They go out to LA and they go to producer to producer, everyone that they can find. And, they all like his stuff, but ultimately it's not disco. So they're not really interested. It's just not the kind of sound they're looking for. They said, we're looking for a group more like America. So Ford and his buddy begin to play the club circuit, unsuccessful with getting their record deal. And again, they're kind of put off because that's not really what people want to hear anymore. And so they end up having his buddy ends up leaving the band. He's like, "This is it. We're done." So he leaves Ford on his own. And you can see, yeah, Ford shoves the beer bottle in his mouth. He's not really happy about this. And he goes off on his own. And he's forced to work a whole bunch of odd jobs, all loosely, peripheral to the record industry. So he takes up jobs as a janitor. He doesn't really care what he has to do. But throughout this process, he's learning everything there is about the music business. So he ends up taking up a chauffeur job, and he picks up this very famous star musician who used to be famous for rock and roll, but has now switched over to, you guessed it, disco. So disco is clearly the villain in this story. um, and so he picks this guy up in the limo, and him and his girlfriend. And his girlfriend the whole time is whining that she wants her liquid protein. She has to have her liquid protein. And Ford, on the radio, he obviously recognizes this guy, turns on the radio, and this guy's latest disco song is on the radio. And he very quickly clicks that off onto the rock and roll station. This guy gets very upset with them, and he's like, "What do you think you're doing?" And and that's when Ford responds with, "What do you mean? What do you hear? Is it the sound of your conscience? The music you murdered? Does it haunt you in the night, Bob Ballou, like a telltale heart?" And so his girlfriend's like, "Don't you know who she is? He's going to have you fired, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know." He's like, "All these years trying to work my way up to minimum wage. Now I'll have to start from the bottom again, right?" So this rocker guy, Bob Ballou, he's like, all right, you're a funny guy. I can deal with that. He says, you know what? I got a personal job for you. And he throws him this wad of cash. He's basically kind of trying to have his fun to manipulate Farlane. And Ford admits, he's like, yeah, there's not much I can do. I need the money. So yeah, I'll do your job. What do you want me to do? And he says, well, um, I want you to get me a pound of calcium hypochlorite by tonight. He's like, how am I supposed to get that? He's like, yeah, that's your problem. He's like, but that bleaching powder puts just the right shade of white in my hair. So so he ends up taking so he drops Bob Ballou off, continues on with the girlfriend, takes her to the recording studio. There she gets her liquid protein, and she goes to perform a song. But first, they have to get this other woman, and he learns that this other woman is actually the voice on the record, and this other girl, she's just there for a look. She can't sing to save her life. So
They're Milli Vanilling it, is what you're saying.
exactly, that's what's
Okay.
going on here. And they're saying that all that matters is the cover art and who's on the cover now. This singer, she doesn't feel, she's like, I'm not cover art material, so I just do the singing, and they put her on the cover. And with that, this girl, she starts yelling at the singer, right? Well, Ford is having none of that, and he shouts back at her. And they get in a bit of an argument. And he's got to sit there and well, yeah, so they get in an argument and he walks off. That's right. um so he goes out later that night. He's in search for this calcium hypochlorite. He goes everywhere. He doesn't know where to find it, doesn't even know what it is. Finally, he goes to Liberty Cleaning Solutions, and he's got to kind of break in the dead of night and steal some of this powder. He ends up showing up at Baloo's house again, and you can see he's surrounded by some women, and he gives them the powder and says, I got another job for you. And he throws him another wad of cash. But this time, Ford's not having any of it. He's like, I'm done. Gives him the finger, and he walks off. So he ends up having some phone calls with his old buddy. Again, looking for another job is basically what he's trying to do. And he gets this job with this other guy. And it turns out being another disco guy. So you can imagine how that goes, right? And he's like, oh man. So again, he wants Ford to basically take him to the record company and help him get a record deal. So he's kind of forced to do that. We'll jump along here to the good stuff. The guy ends up getting beat up. None of that really matters so much. But while they're at this party, this woman comes running out. And she's like, she's dead. She's dead. And Ford goes in to take a look and see what happens. And he finds that it's the girlfriend. She died. Her liquid protein was poisoned. So this disco guy goes running off. He doesn't want to be seen. The cops show up, and they arrest the singer. They think that she was behind this. And that's when Ford speaks up and says, hey, she had nothing to do with it. And so they end up arresting him as well for having some kind of knowledge of the incident, right? They take him in. There she is. She's died from her poisoned liquid protein. And Ford begins to tell them that he's the one that bought the calcium hypochlorite. That's how he knows this other singer did not do it. And they're like, oh, really? So they arrest him. They take him in. And let's see. They realize it's not him, and they're forced to let him go, is basically what happens. So back at Bob Ballou's house. They end up there because Ford explained to him that he dropped off this powder to this guy. They show up at his house. He's having this party, and the police are there to arrest him. And he makes a run for it. This weird guy with the white hair. And he goes to he throws the speaker at Ford. Ford's trying to chase him down to catch him. And they get in a bit of a fight, as you can see here. Bob Ballou kind of kicks him where you don't want to be kicked. And he's like, now that's funny. And as Ford is nursing his wounds, Bob Ballou turns around to run, and he trips over the speaker wire, and the stereo goes crashing into the pool with Bob electrocuting him. So with that, Ford's free. They've solved the case, and then it has this weird wrap up where I guess he lands with some of the girls at that party, is my assumption, and he keeps getting phone calls. It's not that apartment or not that important. Basically, again, yeah, honestly, these conversations just aren't that important. So I'm going to go right through them. But he decides that basically what he wants to do is he wants to become a detective for a living. And so that brings us back to where we started. He's got his own investigation office. And here he is, Mr. Rock and Roll Detective. And that's where this story ends. It was very silly. I mean, it wasn't a bad read, honestly. But yeah, here you can see this is where it wasn't until after I finished reading this. I'm like, what am I reading? And I got to this page and I realized, oh, this is based on this movie, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, with Andrew Dice Clay.
Sure. And the fact that this is a prequel explains why it was in the disco era when we're talking a comic book that was published in 1990.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a name I haven't heard in a long time, Andrew.
Right?
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was picking when I chose this book.
Yeah. Incidentally, I was very surprised you picked this because there was a Green Lantern book on the list.
There was.
So let's say hello.
Two of them, wasn't there?
There was one for sure. I knew
Just
that.
one, I think.
We'll say hello to John's Comics with Kids. Thanks for joining us. But here we've had several decades example for you of some of the artwork of Jose Delbo. Definitely will be missed. Just going to say it again. My favorite comic book artist because of the memories that his work brought to me. So
and NFT legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm sure his estate was very happy he did that.
And you know what? Honestly, I think the art was the best part of my story.
Sure. Yeah, the artwork was strong. So
yeah, it was. It was good.
Nice.
And you know what? What I really found interesting as we went through each of our stories, you could actually tell the decade that it was in.
Yeah, you sure can. You could see the work.
Oh yeah,
change with the times.
Yes,
so to
absolutely.
Speak. So yeah.
I mean, mine was
good.
very 90s, right? The art style.
Yeah. But as we kind of transition a little bit into the book show portion, I'm going to go first, and I'm going to. Usually, I talk about my channel first and what's coming up, but I mentioned during my retro review to pay attention to something. Because it would pay off when I kind of did my book show portion. Do you guys remember in my story, there's an actress that's pretending that she's Wonder Woman, and she even fooled Steve Trevor. Do you remember that part on my story?
Yeah.
Oh,
nice.
The original pencil and inks by Jose Delbo.
Oh, wow.
From that page.
Is it?
How'd you get that?
I bought this from the inker, which was Dave Hunt. He sadly has passed away too. Not only did I get this one, if you remember on the very next page, Amy gets cast, and then the DC Comics bigwigs come to see her, like Jeanette Kahn and Len Wein, and they start filming the movie. I have this page too, so I have 2 consecutive pages from that issue.
Is that
Are they in
signature on the
some
side?
kind of Oh yeah.
What did she say?
Is that a signature on the side? I see.
That would be the inker, yeah, Dave Hunt.
Nice.
You should put them in some kind of protective sleeve.
I do have them in protective sleeve. I just took them out for the show tonight.
Yeah.
And washed my hands big time before I started the show and haven't touched anything really since. So,
cool.
But yeah, to own some original Jose Delbo art, I'm pretty happy. I own some more from him too, but these are some published pages. I love this one, has dual Wonder Womans on it. It has the DC Comics people. I have a little bit of Queen Hippolyta on this page. On my previous page, I have Steve Trevor. So, I kind of have like a lot of the main Wonder Woman cast when it comes to it. So I thought that's partially why I chose my book tonight to review, because I thought it tied into this book show portion so well. But speaking of my channel, I dropped a video this past week on my YouTube channel, the Comic Book Editions video, where I showed some silver, bronze, and modern books that I've recently added into my collection. So that video is already up and live. There's the back issue of the week YouTube short that's live on my channel that drops every Monday. There'll be another one dropping tomorrow morning. And then on Tuesday afternoon dropping on my channel, the next Comic Book Editions video is I went to a comic show the last weekend in January, like 2 weeks ago. And I show my haul from that event in the video dropping Tuesday. So make sure to sub me up. Of course, sub up all of the fanboys. There's links to everyone's channel in the description for this video. Fu, are you ready to go next for a book show and talk about your channel?
I am.
Okay.
I don't have much to talk about my channel, but I do have a book show. You mentioned there was a Green Lantern, and I believe that's this one right here, 169.
Oh,
Looks
very
like
cool.
it.
What volume is that?
This would be volume 2. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a cool shot of the Green Lantern Corps too, because you got some others in there. It's the glare is killing me.
Yeah, that's a great shot.
Yeah. Very cool.
Nice. Tony, what about you?
I dropped a whole bunch of shorts, and surprisingly, it did very well. I've been on a little bit of a winning streak lately, so hopefully that can continue. As well as some other YouTube videos that AI has said that they would do very well, and they've been kind of right, kind of wrong, but hey, I'll take the sub count and the views. So
Yeah.
I woke up this morning and I was minus 695 views, so I was very confused.
Yeah, they took views away from you.
It took views, not only a couple, but they took like hundreds of views away on a video that didn't have hundreds of views. So
So you're in the negative view count.
Yeah, I'm in a negative view count. Negative.
That's an accomplishment.
I that has to be right, because that's what I said. And I looked it up and it said like, oh yeah, sometimes like there's a weird glitch, it'll fix itself. But so I screenshot it just so it'd be cool. But book show, I got 2 here. Spectre Volume 1, Issue 1. I've shown this 100 times, but this is the current volume we read tonight. This is still a very affordable key. I think this is first Spectre solo series, Issue 1. So this one is a key. It's kind of hard to find in good shape, just because it's age and it's up there in price. But a new book that I got this week would be the MegaCon Shazam foil, super cool variant of Black Adam. That is awesome, and it comes with a COA. So I got number 285 out of 300. And I gotta call out some of the resellers, because as soon as they announced this Shazam book, it was on eBay for $70. The sale price was only $40, and you can still get it on the website for $40.
Yeah.
So why would you pay $70?
Oh yeah, people have been doing that for years.
I know, but it's just like, come on, just do 2 minutes of research, save yourself some money.
They're hoping you won't.
Yep.
There's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah, there sure is.
Everyone assumes it sells out, right?
Well, those are some good book shows, and thank you guys for joining us for the retro review tonight. Anything else going on that you want to talk about or preview, or any other burrs under your saddles?
Oh man, lots of stuff, but that's a different type of show for another day.
All right. Well, Comic Fu, I think next week it finally will get around to being your pick.
Oh, it's going to be so exciting next week. Honestly, to everyone watching this, you got to tune in next week. It's going to be a really important episode.
I have no problem reading a Harley Quinn book.
There you go.
I do. I got issues with it.
Don't worry, Tony. I picked a very special one out just for you.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah. Thanks for watching tonight, especially if you watched in the rewind as well. I know that there were other things on TV to watch tonight, and the fact that you chose to spend some time here is not lost on me or the rest of our panel. Have a wonderful week. You've been watching the greatest DC Comics show on YouTube, Fanboys Live in the Retro Review. Same bat time, same bat channel next week. See you then. Bye.